because we were originally like, okay, Gaines is not a Revit guy.
Don't know it.
Did, didn't know Revit existed, and I'm like, well, I don't want you to learn Revit.
I
And then
can
we
rotate
realized that
things now.
Revit's a central, like we're using ACC and he's got to log in and I've got to log in, and like I'll update something and then I'll just ping him on Discord and say, hey, I've laid down like the rough pass of what the topography is supposed to look like. I would love it if you would do, you know, river work, rock work, and, you know, give me a couple more ideas. And then 24, 48 hours later, we get on another call. He's using literally just Revit syncing to allow us to layer on story. And it's still like to this day, Revit's one of the only multi-user workflows that exist. So all we had to do was bridge back to Blender, and Enscape is our bridge. And so we just used the bridge that's naturally there. We didn't write software or anything. We didn't have to. We just had to unpack the process.
And getting things into Enscape was like a hilarious mishap where like what I find most annoying about Enscape, because I think it's like a great tool, what I find most annoying is like the process of importing individual custom assets and then having that match what he sees from what I see. If I go through and set up a material versus if he goes through and imports it, there's going to be slight differentiate. Like the color scheme in Blender is different than Enscape, and like you'll get darker colors in Enscape. But I can actually just go to my custom library folder, click the assets, and then just give them to you, and you put them in that same folder, and everything shows up.
Yeah, that was actually I think that's the last leave behind that we kind of we skipped over. So we're using Revit as the way to communicate the multi-user, you know, discussion and modeling updates. Enscape was the bridge between Blender and Revit, but how did we then share our Enscape assets? That became a problem in and of itself. So we realized that we could just drag and drop the entire folder. So I think we put our Enscape assets on like Google Drive, and then at one point we put them on GitHub actually, and we would just
there was a lot of methods to try to sync.
Yeah, we would just pull the Git, like he would push and I would pull on GitHub, or I would push and he would pull, and we would sync that way, which is totally not okay with their TOS.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that. But we ended up just settling for like, well, Google Drive, and we just like copy the whole folder down, or we link to that folder. And then we found some really cool stuff, like you could live update assets.
Yeah.
By doing that.
That's very heavy in the next experiment. With like, they give you the raw GLTF, and that lets you kind of, if you know what you're doing, you can get away with a lot. Not that you should be using what you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So this got just to be, you know, the next video we'll record, we're going to dive into. Everybody knows, you know, Enscape doesn't have animated assets. They have these like pseudo animated assets that only they create. So like the tree shiver when the wind is turned up, right? But we can't really tap into that, except for we totally can. But we can't. So we went back to like really old school planar ways of creating animated assets, but using Enscape to iterate on those ideas. So we're going to show how we started doing experiments in particle effects and stuff between Revit and Blender and Enscape. And that's really all we're using, is just those three tools. We don't have to overcomplicate it anymore. I think you can replace Blender with 3D Studio.
Yep.
Pretty easily.
Very easily. Any 3D creator, you can just do the exact same thing. They all work the same.
So Revit is your layout tool and your communication platform for multi-user workflows. Blender is your asset creator, and then Enscape becomes your bridge and rendering platform. That's all you need. So we'll dive into that with a bunch of like planar experiments in another video. But this is useful. Again, big experiment for us. We're just trying to be a little more transparent about what we're doing. If anybody's got questions, ask. And then we'll post these for the next couple of months and see what people think. So, all right, cool. Thanks, Gaines.
Yes, sir.